Hey everyone, Justin Giddings, Kickstarter guy, and today we're going to continue our little mini series within the whole 30 crowdfunding training videos in 30 days, where we talk about Kickstarter versus Indiegogo versus Seed&Spark. And today we're going to talk about Indiegogo, a platform with which I have an unusual relationship. It's actually where I raised my first $100,000 for my own 2 short films that kind of kickstarted this whole thing. And I've had, at various times it's been either my favorite platform or my least favorite. So I'm going to try to go through the facts of it neutrally, and then I'll give you my opinion at the end. Sound good? Okay, so let's talk about the basics. So Indiegogo has both a flexible and a fixed funding model. You can do funding campaigns on Indiegogo where it's all or nothing. You got to hit 100% or you get nothing. However, most people use the flexible funding model. It's kind of the main reason people tend to use Indiegogo. And the perception of your audience is that Indiegogo is flexible funding. So if you remember back in the Kickstarter video where I talk about how the fixed funding model is one of the things that makes Kickstarter so great, I've had clients go, well, why can't I just do a fixed funding model on Indiegogo then and get those same benefits? And the answer is because it's the perception of the audience that makes that fixed funding model work so well with Kickstarter, and the perception for Indiegogo is that it's flexible funding, even if it's not. So you kind of get the cons of it, of the flexible funding in terms of audience perception without the benefits of the fixed funding. So also there's so just some more basics. There's a 5% fee. That's kind of standard on all of them. The card processing fee is about 3.5%. Sometimes it ranges as high as 9%. It kind of depends on what type of campaign, but most of the time, for most of you, it's going to be on that lower end. And of course, you can always email them to get kind of a final number on that. They do allow equity-based and nonprofit campaigns. Kickstarter does not allow nonprofits, kind of. That's not exactly true. Both Kickstarter and Seed&Spark will allow for a company to be a nonprofit and use that tax ID number in order to funnel the funds through. Indiegogo actually has integration with nonprofit companies, including First Funding, I believe, is the one, which is connected to nonprofit funding and stuff. So you can set it up so that your backers get an immediate receipt that they can use to write off for their taxes and so forth. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. So let's break down the pros. One of the biggest pros for Indiegogo is they have very strong analytics and tracking. They're the only ones that allow integration with Facebook Pixel, which again, if you remember from the Kickstarter video, I'm like, why is this even a problem? It's 2019 or 2020 or whatever year you're watching this in. I like their design actually and their user interface a lot more than definitely than Kickstarter. And there's it's different enough from Seed&Spark to be difficult to make a direct comparison, but I like Indiegogo's design and UI. Their go-go factor, their trending numbers are really easily influenced. So Don Cheadle was crowdfunding during the same time we were crowdfunding our sci-fi short, and he was doing the Miles Davis biopic he was doing. And we would kind of trade off where we would be the #1 campaign and then he would be the #1 campaign in film, and it would kind of be back and forth. And I imagine that he was real, or his team, I don't even know how much he was doing, but I imagine it was very confusing. Like, what's this little sci-fi? Why is it doing so well? Because he had thousands of backers and we had dozens to hundreds. And it's because I know how to influence the go-go factor. So you can trend higher than just getting a bunch of money and a bunch of backers really quickly, which is kind of how the other platforms work. It allows for direct engagement with backers, so you get their email as soon as they contribute to the campaign. So you can send them those personalized thank you notes and that kind of stuff. You don't have to worry about retention because it's a real-time credit card transaction. Again, like I said, they support nonprofit, fiscal sponsorship, so a lot of the fiscal sponsor campaigns through Indiegogo, you often won't have to pay an extra fee, whereas on the other platforms, you pay an extra fee for fiscal sponsorship. Kickstarter takes all of their percentages, then they send the money to your fiscal sponsor, and then your fiscal sponsor charges you for that. Indiegogo, with many of the big ones, Fractured Atlas, that kind of thing, they will sort of, basically there's a deal they work out where you save some money on that fiscal sponsorship. They also allow for secret perks. This is great, particularly, frankly, for products where you can create a landing page that says, hey, if you give us your email for upcoming crowdfunding campaign, we'll send you a link for a secret special perk that won't be available publicly. It won't even be visible. You'll get a special link, and so that can be an incentive for people to give their email address. In-demand funding. So this is actually how Indiegogo kind of makes most of their money now, is even if you're not on Indiegogo, once you have a successful campaign, whether it's Indiegogo or on another platform, you can port it over to Indiegogo and continue receiving funds. And this is called in-demand funding. If you are running your campaign on Indiegogo, this can be really, really valuable, because what will happen is people will sort of straggle in a couple days after your campaign, and you might raise an extra couple $100. I've seen even a couple $1,000 happen in that space before. So if you're raising funds on Kickstarter, Seed&Spark, and then you move it over, you're probably going to lose that, just because it's got to happen fast, so that, again, that traffic that is trickling in actually, like, you catch them in that window. But obviously if you're doing it natively with Indiegogo, you don't have to worry about that. And they also kind of censor less. So Kickstarter is a little bit more wary about what you offer as perks and what you offer, like, in terms of content. They can be a bit stricter about it and what you're allowed to raise funds for. Indiegogo just doesn't seem to care. So, cannabis related products, for example, like, you can't do that on the other platforms. Indiegogo is like, great, go for it. Okay, let's talk about the cons. Most of them aren't big deals. The big one I'll get to, but lower name recognition. So, anytime you're not using Kickstarter, you're going to be using a platform that less people know about. Did I say that right? Yeah. So lower name recognition, again, and I said this even when high name recognition was a pro for Kickstarter, it all comes down to the traffic, driving traffic to the landing page. And as long as the landing page is well done, well constructed, and clearly, like, professional and legitimate, which all of these three platforms look like that, you don't really have to worry about that, but it is something to kind of keep in mind. It has the lowest platform success rate for film. I found a statistic a few months ago. I think it was 13% was their success rate, something like 12 or 13%. Kicks for like that 10 to 20K sweet spot, which is where a lot of their published statistics kind of start. Kickstarter's in like the 30 or 40s. Seed&Spark's in like the 70 to 80s. So for those like kind of smaller campaigns, it's already out of the gate kind of lower than everybody else, and frankly it gets much worse as those numbers get higher. There's also little to no customer support. So one of the reasons why Indiegogo used to be my favorite platform, so hint hint, it's not anymore, spoiler alert, is because they had incredible customer service. Mark Hofstadter and John Trigonis both worked in the film department. They were great guys, easy to get a hold of, and they really worked with me and my clients, and all filmmakers to like help be as successful as possible, because they were both filmmakers who also had crowdfunded and kind of got into that space. Mark left to go be a producer, and John got promoted into another department. And so as far as I understand, and I check in every once in a while, as of now, this is, what month are we in? September 2019. There is not a film support. Like, they didn't replace them with other people. Now, why would this be the case? Here's my conjecture, although it hasn't been confirmed. Indiegogo makes so much more money with products. All these platforms do, right? If you're raising $1 million for a cooler and they're getting 5% of it, it makes sense for them from a company perspective to invest their time and effort and their manpower and their people in where they're making the most money. So if you're going to lean down and slim down, not having a film department where you're making, a couple $1,000s maybe on bigger campaigns, most of which are not successful, that I can see from their perspective why that's not a great place to invest time and resources. Why not move those talented people into bigger campaign categories like products and technology and games? So the bummer for us, of course, on the film side is like, I don't have anybody now to call and to help my clients out. There's other than like support. And I can, I've still got like a couple of strings I can pull here and there, but with Seed&Spark and Kickstarter, particularly with my clients, I can just, like, I got ins, frankly. So in my world in particular, this is problematic. I already mentioned that it's difficult for larger campaigns, and here's why. The big con is the flexible funding model. This is the big problem. So again, this is what most filmmakers, why they choose Indiegogo. Man, if I can just get something, that'd be great. But the problem is nobody wants to be first money in, ever, in film, ever. Kind of actually maybe probably in general in terms of investing, but nobody wants to be first money in. And so when there is let's say you're raising 30K and I come along and you've raised 5K. Okay, great. Well, if I contribute right then, I'm swiping my credit card in real time. I'm giving you $50 or $100 or something like that. But I have no idea if you're actually going to hit your goal. And if you've done a good job, you've convinced me that, hey, if you get 30K, you're going to make this awesome thing. So what happens if you don't? So here's the anecdote. I raised my money on Indiegogo. So on the second campaign, we had a $60,000 goal. And on July 4th weekend, we got into their newsletter because it's a cool sci-fi, and we got into their newsletter, and I woke up. I remember this because it was my future sister-in-law's birthday, and me, my writing partner, and his wife, obviously my wife, and then my brother and my future sister-in-law, we were all up in Big Bear having this big birthday weekend, and I wake up to discover we've raised $12,000 more that day. So we're at like 20-ish out of 60. And I had so many emails, like 20 or 30 emails from people saying, hey, I saw this. It looks really cool. I'm interested in maybe getting the $5,000 executive producership or the $1,000 associate producer or the $2,500 co-producer, but you've got a pretty big gap. Like you got $40,000 more to raise, and that's a big gap. What are you going to do? Assuage my fears that if I give you money, a particularly significant amount, that everything's going to be okay. Now, I'm a professional at this. I can write good emails. I had all the answers. I was super confident. We were actually raising funds on another platform and had already raised another $20,000 elsewhere, which is why if you go to the platform, the campaign on Indiegogo, it doesn't look like successful, but we actually ended up raising like 65K total. By the way, don't do split campaigns. Bad idea. Anyway, so I've got a response to all those questions, but I was only able to convince one of those people to come in as an executive producer. So yeah, $5,000 that came out of that, but had that just been wow, this looks really cool, I'll pledge, and if they hit their goal, great, get to be an EP. All of those emails, why would you even send those emails? There's no need for you to send those emails because there's no question of, hey, if you don't get your money, what are you going to do? Because it's all or nothing, right? So I've seen time and time again that particularly larger campaigns, like 30K or over, it can be a death knell for a lot of projects. Now, I've got like 20 campaigns that have proven the rule wrong, right? So these are best practices. These are things to kind of keep in mind. For some people, all those pros really add up and they're willing to take their risk. And if they're raising 20 or 30K, it doesn't feel like that big of a thing. I just really want to strongly caution, though, this tends to slow down momentum. It tends to decrease backer confidence. This can be, if you look at my my client sheet where I type down all the money and the amount they raise and I keep all of my analytics, it's all Kickstarter, Seed&Spark, Kickstarter, Seed&Spark, and every once in a while there's an Indiegogo that's successful. Indiegogo also seems to attract the clients of mine that early on I can tell that they're not all in themselves and they really are just kind of grabbing for as much money as they can get. So it might sort of be a little bit of confirmation bias in the sense of oh, these people aren't really serious, and then oh look, they didn't raise money because they weren't really serious, and that kind of thing, right? So there might be a little bit of that there, but for me personally, with my clients, when they say they want to do Indiegogo, I try to convince them otherwise, and until there's new information that comes in that changes that's probably going to be my official recommendation, that Indiegogo, you have to have a really good and really specific reason to want to go with a platform that they themselves aren't really into film anymore, and it's not really the best place to raise your funds, I think, on Indiegogo. Also, I've had weird technical glitches pop up with them. So for example, whenever my clients launch a campaign, I always contribute to their campaign. I can't on Indiegogo for whatever reason, and I mean, again, I'm a techie dude. I can do a little bit of coding and programming. I know my way around a computer. I try incognito mode. I try different things. But for whatever reason, my IP address is whatever. I'm not able to contribute to my own clients' campaigns, which is weird. I often have trouble contributing to really any campaign. And on their mobile interface, I get a lot of complaints. I'll say it this way. The only time my clients email me and say, my backers are having trouble contributing, it's timing out on the website, or the card's never going through, or it's missing the zip code on the mobile interface. Anytime I'm getting complaints about, oh, my potential backers are having troubles, what do I do? It's only Indiegogo that's happening with. And again, it's September 2019. You know, if you're watching this video a year or two from now and there's not new information that I felt it worth to update the video, you know, shoot me an email, ask me questions. You know, maybe there's something tiny and you can kind of run it by me. Or of course, if you're in my course or you're a coaching client, you can always go into our private group and ask the community there. There's 1,000 people there, so you can kind of figure that out. But officially, and if this is the only time we ever interact and you're looking for that Kickstarter versus Indiegogo answer versus Seed&Spark, I'm going to vote Kickstarter or Seed&Spark almost every time. In fact, let me talk about kind of the whole tax write-off thing, which is another big reason that people want to do fiscal sponsorship in general, let alone with Indiegogo. That whole tax write-off thing doesn't really matter to anybody except for your 1,000 plus backers, and usually there's only a couple of those people. So to run one's entire campaign either through a fiscal sponsorship with Indiegogo, or even worse, frankly, with Kickstarter, Seed&Spark, where they take their platform fees and then the fiscal sponsor takes their fees, so you're losing, you know, 7%, 8% for the platform, and then another 7% for the just to have the ability to tell people it's a write-off, and for it to be a write-off, that's like 15% out the door before you've even done perk fulfillment. That's not worth it, in my opinion. Most of the people who are going to be giving you big money either are giving it to you because they have a relationship with you, not because they're looking for the write-off, or they're total strangers and they just think this thing is awesome. And very rarely is it like, oh, I think this thing is awesome, but I'm not going to support it. Oh, and they have a write-off. Like that's a really narrow margin, and in my opinion, not worth it, especially if you're getting, check with your fiscal sponsor if you're getting extra costs added on to that. What you're getting from a potential 5K person is undercut by, an extra 8% of all of your contributions going away. So I don't recommend, like, tax write-off ability is not always a big deal. If you want to have kind of a tax write-offable option for people, especially if you do have family members where, like, you feel like, okay, that's going to really sweeten the pot. Like, I've got a family member who's very, very wealthy but a bit cranky, and so that's one of the ways that we raised money in on our second platform was a fiscal sponsorship platform. That was how I kind of sweetened this deal, because it was going to be an awkward, unfun conversation. So that's cool. Like, have a fiscal sponsorship, and maybe before the campaign starts, figure out if some of the big fish in your network are going to contribute, and you can maybe sweeten the deal by saying, great, you can just contribute straight to the fiscal sponsorship, and then you can lower your number on your raise, which means higher chance of success, easier campaign, and the higher chance of raising more than that money. That's how I would utilize fiscal sponsorship. It's rare that I would run it through the campaign itself. If people have a lot of questions about fiscal sponsorship, I might do a whole other video where I reiterate this and some of the other stuff about it, but it's not something I come across often enough that it feels like it needs its own video, unless, of course, you tell me otherwise, and that's how I kind of want to end. Tomorrow I'm going to do a review on Seed&Spark. Spoiler alert, probably my favorite platform, and kind of the pros and cons there. But in the meantime, however you're watching this, please leave your comments and thoughts and questions below. If you're on YouTube, please like and subscribe for more videos. If you're on Facebook, comment and share. I'm a really, really, really big believer in helping filmmakers understand that being creative is not a zero-sum game. You can be a successful crowdfunder, and your network can have successful crowdfunding campaigns in it, and that's actually better for everybody. The more we change the sort of narrative around crowdfunding being this awful, begging, unpleasant thing, which it doesn't have to be at all. It's just that way because people have done it wrong. They don't know what they don't know. The more we can change that and have better, positive campaigns where people are doing good jobs and they're fulfilling their perks and they're making awesome art, the more we elevate, right? The rising tide raises all ships. So, not for my ego. I know how to do this, and I'm a filmmaker. It's kind of like my main thing anyway, so I've got my main thing. I'm cool. Not for my ego, but really for the sake of the community. If you're into this, like, share, comment, engage with it however you can. Spread the word, help other people, and let's elevate all the ships. Let's raise the tide. All right, peace. I hope this was helpful. Again, if you've got questions, let me know, and I'll address them in future videos. But for tomorrow, we will finish our Kickstarter versus Indiegogo versus Seed&Spark series by landing on Seed&Spark. And I'll break down those cons, and then I'll give you kind of an overall summary of my thoughts. All right, hope this video finds you well. Peace.